Welcome, friends. It's been a while. Today we're going to take a look at the TiO2 X-Metal 20.
This is the O-Review podcast. O-Review.
Okay, many apologies for taking so long to have a new review up, but things have been busy. I've had some side work come in, which is always good to help with the bills, but unfortunately it leaves you with no free time in the afternoon after the normal job passes. I'm also teaching 2 classes this semester, so that also fills up a lot of the other afternoon as well. However, I'm going to try to get back into the swing of things. I'm actually going to try to record 2 of them today, so that way I can have some padding in case next week ends up being tied up as well. So let's take a look at this. There's going to be a lot of similarities between this and the gold one because it's in essence really just the same model, just it doesn't have gold, it has X-Metal. But I'll try to repeat some things just because in case you stumble across this review and you don't want to look at the old one, you'll have all the information there. So, the X-Metal 20, or the X-Metal XX as it may be called, was created in 1999, which was a couple years after the whole X-Metal project started. So this came out the same year as the Juliet, and it was basically built as a larger version of the Juliet for people who wanted just sort of a slightly taller frame. Material is just a compound of various titanium and a couple other metals, and it was built in their Nevada plant because they wanted to get into the titanium metal business, but also make something that really stood out and was difficult to work with, but still justified and created a really awesome piece. So, unlike the Juliets, it has the hammer stems. So they do tend to go out a little bit further. Really, if you just did a straight line there, it's not like you're going to have a whole lot more space, but it does end up being a bigger frame altogether. Definitely a little bit taller, but actually these stems are hot swappable with the Juliet, the Mars, the Romeo. All the early X-Metals have the same one, so it's really kind of the same thing. What we have here is we have the X-Metal colorway. So X-Metal covers the whole line, it covers the material, it also covers the specific gray color that was on some of the stems and some of the frames. So the nose bridge and the ear stems are the X-Metal color, and then here I believe we have, it's not polished, I don't believe it's plasma, might be plasma, maybe titanium. It's one of those things. They officially call it just the TiO2 or the titanium oxide, but I forget which one the gold one was, because one of them was plasma, one of them was just straight titanium, because there was also a titanium colorway frame model too, just to kind of confuse you for the frame model and all the names and stuff like that, so, whatever. Black iridium lenses, so it's really explained, if you don't want the pop and the flash of the gold pair, this pair is exactly like it, it's just the color is completely stripped out, and it makes it really kind of a nice subdued pair, but still somewhat aggressive, because, this was the late 90s and how those sort of styles were in. So, let's try these on, because I know people want to see them on me, and since it's not a vintage pair, I don't have any problem wearing it, because I don't think I'm going to break it. If I break titanium, I'm in trouble. So, a little bit of light leakage up here, because, even though it's a bigger frame, it just does sort of sit in a certain ways, but, overall it's nice. Very comfortable. Does kind of pinch your nose a little bit, but not too bad. Certainly light, and that's the great thing about titanium, is that despite all of its rigid strength, you really don't have all the extra weight that, something like steel would have, so it makes it really nice. Ear socks, nose bombs, and temple shocks. And the temple shock should be hot swappable between Romeo, Mars, Juliet, and X-Metal 20, so all of those can be pretty much swapped. I have the 15s in here, and I believe they went 15, 25, 50, 75, believe it. So this is actually the smallest ear T-shocks. And they make it fit pretty well. If I had anything bigger, basically the frames would slowly start coming in, and that wouldn't really be good. So that's all right. So, if you want to do some customs with this, you are going to need a T6 Torx wrench, which you can either buy just as its own tool or just as a bit that you can put into a magnetic screwdriver. And that's going to fit for both the hinge here as well as the bridge right down here. So that way you can take out the lenses or you can swap these ear stems. Unlike the newest X squared, which also uses, I'm not sure if that's a Torx too or if that's just an Allen wrench, but basically there's screws on the back of that one, which allows you to do not only ear stem swaps, but also nose bridge swaps. So you can bring all those around, you can make TiO2 X-Metal X squared rather. This one is basically just riveted in, so you'd have to drill out the rivet, re-rivet it. You'd need the tools for all that. It would take, basically makes customization a lot harder. But, I've seen people doing, they took actually the 24K one, they popped it out and they put Juliet lenses in here, or Juliet orbitals, and that actually made a 24K or a TiO2 Juliet. Although actually Juliet did come into TiO2, just wasn't as popular. So those are just kind of a couple of things here. It's rigid, it's strong, it's also light, it's a great pair. Very good for if you don't want to have a lot of flash, but you want to have something that does have some style to it. So I really highly recommend these. I used to wear these a lot. Actually, I used to wear the 24Ks a lot. I didn't wear these as much because the 24Ks, when I got them, they were kind of beat up a little bit. The lenses were scratched. It was kind of loose. So I figured, what's not a big deal if I wear that. However, these ones came in mint condition, so I didn't wear them as much. Plus, they aren't loose at all. They're nice and tight, so I wanted to keep them that way. Now, the reason I got these mint condition is that kind of leads me to another story. Back in like the 2004 time frame, if you had a Romeo, and I will get to Romeo at some point, I think I'm later on by the time I actually picked one of those up, so it might be in quite a few episodes from now. But basically, instead of having a nose bridge right here with a flex coupler, the hinge was actually right in the middle of the orbital, so the lenses were subject to all the stress every time we put it on, off, moved, whatever. And the lenses stressed so much that they had stress fractures in it. So Oakley issued a recall, and they said, if you want to send us your old Romeos in, we'll give you either Juliet or an X Metal 20 of the same value. And at the time, I think $275 was the retail for most of the X Metals that weren't out there. I know 325 was the gold one, and a lot of the fire and ice ones added like a $10 premium. But this one was in the 275, so I said, hey, I'll do a swap for that one. I actually got the Romeos for free from a guy. We used to go to sushi down in Newport a lot, and guy had an old pair. He wore it skiing. I don't know how he wore an X Metal skiing, but he did. It's just been sitting in a drawer. He gave it to me, and then what happened is I ended up trading that for this one. So now I have a nice mint condition X Metal 20, and I didn't have a Romeo anymore. But I ended up picking up a fire pair later on, so I will review that later. Some people opted to not trade it in because they figured the Romeo was then going to be a little bit more valuable in time. And I don't know, I'd say they're probably equally valuable being some of the older X Metals now. So that's pretty much it. I do recommend this pair. It's a nice style, it's a nice fit, certainly light enough that you're not going to worry about having it weigh on your head too much. You do want to make sure you tighten this over time. You really can't do a whole lot about the nose, the flex couplers on the nose bridge. But if you have a T6, you can just tighten these up just by cranking the screw a little bit, and then the stems will be nice and tight for you. So again, I hope you found it informative and entertaining somewhat, and you take care. Thanks you. Bye.